to the Extra Lucky Podcast. I'm Taryn.
And I'm Jess.
And we are joined today by Danny Jordan. Danny is an award-winning author and TV producer. When his daughter was born with an upper limb difference in 2018, he became an advocate for inclusion and accurate representation in disability in the media. Danny's premiere book, Ray's First Day, the first story in the Capable series, received the Kirkus Star, the IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award, and was named one of the best books of 2021 by Kirkus Reviews magazine. Outside this thrilling literary adventure, which would have been enough.
There's more, yeah.
Danny has produced and directed over 200 hours of primetime major network and cable television programming, along with co-hosting the #1 Christmas podcast in the world, Christmas Countdown. Danny was most recently on the production team for How to Dance in Ohio, a Broadway show about and starring individuals with neurodiversity. Danny lives in California with his family and their trusty pup, Sammy. And we'll talk more to Danny now. Welcome.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you.
you. I'm exhausted just listening.
So am
I said to Jess.
Like, why am I here? I should be taking a nap
I said
or
to Jess when
something.
we were coming here, I was like, hey, Danny makes me feel better because you are in a million different directions, and we feel like we're always in a million different directions.
Exactly.
So
I'm very happy. Maybe we'll, all work out because we're trying so many things.
I love that when we showed up here at the building, we all had like backpacks and luggage.
Literal luggage.
Literal luggage. And
Sweating.
I felt like I was going to be alone, but you guys made me feel like I was in a safe space.
Oh,
that
good.
I walked in.
Sorry.
I was like, not the only one running from like one thing to the next and trying to catch a flight. But
Yes.
I'm excited to be here and chat with y'all today.
Thank you.
I love the work you do.
Well, we're so excited to have you. I think it'd be fun for the audience that's listening to kind of understand how we met. And it kind of extends beyond how I thought I knew you.
Oh.
Which is funny. So this past year, as you guys know, I'm a content creator and I do a lot of paid partnerships, but I'm very kind of persnickety about them. I'm very much leading with love and wanting to always make sure that my content speaks to the extra community.
Yeah.
And when I got the email about How to Dance in Ohio, just in my email, and I have my brand manager, and she's like, Jess, did you see this email from the show? And I'm like, what show? And I'm like, I have, by the way, I have a theater background. I went to Elon Musical Theater, I'm a singer, and whatever. But I haven't performed in years and years and years. So I love Broadway. I have such a heart for performance and Broadway. And so I'm reading this breakdown. And, I spent years as an equity member. I've spent years in those audition rooms and reading breakdowns and figuring out what I'm auditioning for. And I'm reading this breakdown and I'm like, oh my God, this is literally written for people with neurodiversity. This has never existed. And I had been a working actor. I was a working actor for a long time. And it was such a full circle moment, even if it didn't work out in a partnership capacity as an extra lucky mom, reading the breakdown was like, oh my God, things are changing. There's chances for my kiddo. Yeah. And I, said yes immediately, sent the rates. I think it was like the fastest turnaround of partnership. Went to the show, had a flippin' emotional reaction. And you guys haven't, we'll put it in the show notes, and unfortunately the show has since closed, but I know it's just the beginning of what you're going to do for the Broadway community and beyond. But the show was phenomenal and tremendous, and our amazing Madison, who's on our team as well, she was in the bathroom with me at intermission, it's okay for me. No impactful as a parent, right? Obviously you see these amazing performers and know they have autism, but I'm the mom, I'm the caregiver, and that song or intermission is about the caregiver and their perspective, and it just broke me because I'm like, I feel seen.
Yeah.
So I felt really called to figure out who the heck did this. Thanks for the opportunity, and so I went kind of a little bit above and beyond. When you're in content creation, you have deliverables and you have to provide certain checkpoints, but I was so called to share way more than I was required to. And so I just started following everyone that would like my post and comment, and you commented. Yeah. And I go on your page and I realize, I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy that I love his book. Oh. And I didn't know that at all. And it's such a beautiful kismet thing. So I went on your page and you didn't even know that your team had sent me your book. Right. 2 years prior when we had launched ELM. Yeah. And I'm gonna let you talk about your book, but I wanted to share how it impacted me, just so that you can understand the impact. But obviously, when we had Adeline and when we had Rhea, we were all about the inclusive literature, and there wasn't a lot starting time there wasn't. And your team reached out to me. I actually should look back at my email and see who it was. But they were like, hey, can we send you this? No strings. And I always try to have a giving capacity. So I said, yes, and let's do a giveaway for another Extra Lucky Mom in our community. So they sent me 2, and you signed the books.
Yes.
And we did a giveaway for one of your books, and that was that, right?
Yeah.
And so for me to have gone through this experience of going to see a Broadway show that I was hired to go see, be so impacted, I go above and beyond, and I realize, like, it's all the universe. It's all connected. And so you're here right now, that's nutty.
It's wild.
It's wild.
It's wild. Like I'm remembering now how that all came to be, because I was so fortunate when I launched the Capables. You know, we did a Kickstarter campaign for our first book, and I had a lot of like doubts about even doing that in the beginning, because it was the middle of the pandemic, and I was like, people are like need money. Like, who am I in the middle of the pandemic to start asking people for money? And one of my best friends, you know, who I've known since high school, he goes, your book is all about including people.
Yeah.
Why don't you give people the opportunity to be included in helping you make this a reality? And it was like, well, that just like shook me to my core sort of situation. And I said, okay, so, and I think part of it was fear, right? Like when you have something you're excited about, I'm sure you all with Extra Lucky Moms, like, you're like, are people gonna think it's like cool, neat? Are they gonna respond to it? It's so personal because it's your child, it's your own life, and you're putting yourself out there raw for the whole world to say yes or no. When I produce TV shows, my job is to tell other people's story.
Right.
Well, now it was like my time to tell my own. And so I was terrified. And so I put it out, and all of a sudden we were just flooded with like support. And this person I've known for a long time, who runs a PR firm here in New York, she reached out to me. She said, I want to help you. I don't want to financially support you. I want to help you when the book is ready to release. I'm going to offer my agency services pro bono. And that was Rachel Harrison is her name, and RHC is her company. And that was the company that I know, because they like sent me a breakdown of like all these like media outlets and influencers and parent pages and all this stuff. They're like, you got to send a book to this person and this person, and they just kept. And so when you say my team, it was me. Like they would send me like an address. I wish I was that cool and had like a team, but but I love that aspect of it, because I get to see the name of the person that it's going to, whether it's an order through our website or a press thing or whatever. Is I like to sort of put that personal touch into things. And so
You signed my book.
I did sign your book, and I'm so
Now it's in a
grateful.
plastic casing in my child's room because I'm like, this is an heirloom. You don't touch it. So
Well,
I'm
I
glad
brought
you
you
brought me
more
an
here
extra.
today. But it's wild, just like you said, the way the universe sort of works, that would happen, and then you would post that thing at Ohio, and now for us to be sitting here literally 2 blocks from where Ohio just
the show.
closed yesterday.
Which I didn't even realize, by the way. Like, I mean, I wished I could tell you, like, and I really was thoughtful in this booking room.
Yeah.
No, I was like, where's the best price in
Yeah.
the conference room? Because, listen, and we always believe with authenticity here.
Right.
And, you know, we're a team of 3 that are, you know, have been on this journey from the beginning, and now we've just expanded to an executive team and all these things. But, like, we have bootstrapped, and I'm not scared to say that. I honestly am proud, and we share the behind the scenes. I literally schlepped a suitcase to the city.
I can attest you did that. I saw that you were schlepping it in. Yeah.
But I don't care. Like, I don't care what anyone thinks. I
Right.
know that I'm doing the good work. You know you're doing the good work. And when you wanted to share your story of this book, it just takes one person to see you.
Yeah.
And that friend, I don't know who you were saying. your
Rachel.
friend,
Yeah.
But the one that was like, no, you should do the.
Oh, my best friend
Kickstarter.
Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, but Jason obviously loves you, and he sees you, and he believed in you. And it just takes that one person to light that fire. And that was Taryn for me, and me for Taryn. And, you know, we were in this position of not having a community. And then what we were able to do together, we were like, this might be bigger than us. So then we just started as a blog, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
But it just takes that one person to
And
make you feel seen.
100%.
And you just start.
Yeah.
You just go.
And I tell people, you know, because I'm sure that you have a lot of parents who are listening out there who have a child with a disability, or they're, you know, a caregiver, educator, grandma, whatever it might be. And a lot of times people will be like, well, how do I impact the world? You know, and I'm like, I go, you got to start with one.
Yes.
Because, you know, and they go, well, it's just. Like, people use the word just before they say one. And I go, there's no such thing as just when it comes to impacting a person. Like, impacting one person is creating a ripple that you don't know
Exactly.
what's going to happen. You know, like How to Dance in Ohio is a perfect example of this, right? Like, we opened the show in December. We just closed yesterday after being open for 2 months. And you could look at it, and I've struggled with this, you know, the last couple of weeks since we announced we were closing. It's like, man, I'm really sad, you know, that this show is closing. But I'm not sad because of money.
Right.
I'm obviously sad for my investors, but like I'm sad because of all the parents who had bought tickets for them to take their kids who were on the spectrum or have a disability in some way to have that experience. That's what I'm sad about.
Yeah.
I'm sad that more people who want to be a part of advocating for disability inclusion and equity and accessibility, that they won't get to see the show on Broadway. But what I'm happy about is that it happened.
It happened.
That we did this thing that never happened before in the history of the biggest theater community in the world.
Yeah.
And the door has been nudged open.
Yeah.
And that's why I say don't just say just.
Yeah.
Because you're pushing the door open a little wider every single time.
I mean, look, it's what happened with, you know, the LGBTQ plus community 20, 30 years ago in Broadway, and now people can be open on Broadway about who they are, right? And now you're part of those steps. I know it was 2 months, and you could say only 2 months, but I think it's 2 big months that you guys made a change.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be the last one.
It's not.
It's not going to be the last one. So talk to us about your inspiration.
Yeah.
Who I know. So what I always like to understand from people is like you welcomed your daughter. How long did it take you to find your voice, to find, to feel like you're ready to advocate, to do something like a book or to step into this world?
And did you have a birth diagnosis or did you know in advance?
We knew in advance. Okay. So we found out, my wife, Lynn, went in for an ultrasound around like 20 weeks, like you normally do. And the radiologist was like, or the tech was like, hey, you're going to get a call from radiology tomorrow. The way the baby is positioned, I just can't get certain images. And my wife got a call the next day, but it wasn't from a radiologist, it was from a genetic counselor. And it was basically like, hey, there's some concerns over what we're seeing and what we're not seeing on the ultrasound. We need to set you up with a perinatologist, a specialist, to do a more thorough ultrasound. And that was shocking, obviously. And then going to the perinatologist, unfortunately, they fit us in because we were going on like a baby moon like 3 days later. And I was like, well, we don't want to leave with this question mark. So they're like, well, you can come in, you may have to wait a long time. We'll wait as long as we have to. And because it's such a thorough, exam, it took like 2.5 hours, for the ultrasound. And the specialist was like, hey, I don't like to talk during my ultrasound. So literally, I sat there staring at the screen, watching her type codes. And I'm like trying to Google what she's typing because I was like, I don't know what CPR, and she's like drawing arrows here and there. And then she like turns on the light at the end. She goes, let's talk. And I was like, okay, well, usually when someone says, let's talk, they're not about to like tell you you won the lottery. Yeah. Like that's not how that goes. But, to answer your question, I've shared this a lot, is that when she said, one of the bones in your daughter's right forearm just didn't form. And we don't know why. They didn't know which one. It's like very vivid in my mind to this day. Like I heard the picture was still on the screen. I'll get choked up talking about it because it's just such a big moment. Yeah. Where I remember looking at the pictures and I was like, that's my daughter. Yeah. Like that's Emerson. Like her story, for me as a storyteller, I think I unknowingly had started writing a story in my mind as to who Emerson was going to be and what she was going to do in her life and what she was going to look like, as we do because we're human, right? But then it was like her real story started to unfold, and the idea for the Capables hit me the next day. Like I was getting ready for work, and I was in the shower, and literally the title "The Capables" like just popped into my head out of nowhere.
It's a creator brain.
And I was like, "What are the Capables? What is this thing?" And like it just started like snowballing, and obviously it's been almost 6 years, since that idea popped into my head, and now I've read to thousands of kids all around the globe.
And it's a series now.
Yeah, we have 2 books, and I'm working on the third right now. And you asked a great question about like when did I know I was ready? Right? And that's a question I still ask myself to this day. Because I'm still learning, right? This as parents, like I think a lot of people assume when you are a parent of a child with a disability that you know everything. All the history, they feel. I've never lived a day of my life with an upper limb difference, physical disability. I have no clue, right?
Yeah.
So like at Emerson, a limb difference at 6 months is different than Emerson at 3, different than 5 when she starts school. Like I'm constantly learning every single day. So like all I know is that I want my daughter to grow up in a world where she knows that like exactly the way that she is, that there's nothing wrong with it, and that it is our differences are what make us super and give us our superpowers in life. Like that's at the core of everything. For me. And so
we say that all the time because Jess and I are both moms to kids with Down syndrome who are under 4 years old. So I don't know what it's like to raise a 20-year-old with Down syndrome or a 45-year-old with Down syndrome. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I hope that this world, this community gives me grace to figure that out. But we have to learn as we go. 4 years ago, I had no idea. When I got a Down syndrome diagnosis, I was like, great.
What does that mean?
Yes.
Right.
I was like, I just gave birth to that baby. Just what?
Yeah.
You know, but I think that there's a beauty in both of our stories, right? In utero diagnosis and not, it's not something that we knew, which is what propelled us to share. Because for me personally, I was an incredibly ignorant individual when it came to disability, not because I wasn't welcoming and loving and kind. I just didn't know. I didn't have anyone in my life that really had affected me yet with a disability. I hadn't gotten that extra bug, right? And so when Adeline was born, I thought my life was over. My husband, I have vivid memories. We wrote about this in Dear Mama. My husband literally laying on top of me sobbing. The man that I always thought was, and it is, okay? But at the time, I'm looking at this man that I know is the strongest man I've ever known. And he's laying on his wife who just got cut open, sobbing on my legs because we both were so ignorant. And so I was like, if both of us are educated individuals who have led with kindness and love, we're so small-minded to think that their life was over, I can't even think about how many other people there are out like us. And so when Taryn and I met, obviously her birth experience was different than mine, but we were like-minded in that kind of perspective. And then when we connected as friends and started this little community, it was like, oh, we gotta do something about this. And especially when it comes to differences. And I think limb difference is a really good topic because it's not cognitive. So there's these sort of like silos in the community, right? Where it's like the Down syndrome community is loud and proud, the autism community is loud and proud. So why are we separating these guys?
But it's like we talk about that people make assumptions about people with disability community, right? Like I've talked about this a lot, where like I've seen people approach somebody in a wheelchair and like talk slowly and loudly to them.
Right.
Like they must not be able to understand me because they're sitting in a wheelchair, right? So we make assumptions, like our kids have a visible, like you know they have Down syndrome because of the physical characteristics of Down syndrome. So people are going to make assumptions about their cognition and all sorts of things through life. So that's what we try to say is like get to know the person first, like let them show you who they are, and then
Well, I'm so jealous, honestly, that I wasn't like you in that moment. Like you saw your daughter first, and I didn't. And it takes a change maker to inspire another. And it took my husband and I months to get to the point where we could advocate the way that we did really. And so that really needs to be.
How was it when
can I jump in real quick? I will say that though, it's been a process, right? Like though in that moment I thought, what can I do? How can I use my skills? How can I use my connections to do something? I'm a very proactive person, but it wasn't until Emerson started school, when she was about 2.5, and because Ray's first day is about her first day of school, right? And there was just something very impactful about watching her go to school for the first time and realizing that, like, when I was writing the book, it was almost like I was writing to myself in the future, because I don't think I fully processed or grieved the loss of the child that I thought I was going to have until you may have done it in that hospital room, right? For me, it wasn't until she was 2.5, 3 years old that I really started to dive into, am I sad about this? Because I feel like we chatted about this on a Zoom call recently, is that, and I want to say this because I think it's important for anyone who has a child with a disability, is that being sad about your child being born with a disability doesn't mean that you're disappointed in them. it means that you have lived a life and you know that the way that the world is, and you know that the world is not historically kind to people who are different. So your sadness isn't about the way your child is. Your sadness, your worry, your tears is about the way the world is.
Because you can't control it.
You can't control it. And all of a sudden, not only are you having a child that's like this, like your heart growing, you know, like the Grinch sort of situation, and everything's changing and it's your heart outside your body and all these things, but now you're thinking about all the, you know, life is difficult, you know, going to school for the first time is hard, and puberty and all these things, getting a job, blah, blah, blah. And now you add on this layer, and we start like fortune telling as to like, well, how is this going to go for my kid? I don't know that kindergarten is going to be hard for Emerson. I don't, or that it's going to be hard because of her disability. I don't know that junior high is going to be hard for her because of her disability. So it's the human mind where we start trying to protect ourselves over what's going to come. And I think all you can do is just like be present in the moment and react to what's happening rather than trying to predict what's going to happen and then react and then hoping that you're ready for it.
Can I ask you this?
Yeah.
Your partner, your wife,
Yeah.
what's her name?
Lynn.
Lynn.
Yeah.
That's right, we kind of met on the...
Yes, she was doing the dishes and she ducked in on a Zoom real quick.
How was her journey? Like, how were you navigating that relationship dynamic at the time? Was she, you know, because listen, when you're hormonal and you're pregnant, like you're not in control as much.
Well, so it's kind of tandem to what I was going to ask, which when you said you had a baby moon to go on, I'm assuming you still went on the baby moon.
Yeah.
So my husband and I conveniently had like our 10th anniversary trip planned, and we wound up getting the Down syndrome diagnosis like 2 days before that. So we had this like 2-3 days of like uninterrupted time together to talk about it.
Yeah.
So when you said that, I was like, oh, that's great, because I know that was like such a breakthrough for us, like to just be somewhere else and able to talk about it. So so both of those questions.
It was, so we went with friends.
Okay.
And we had like, you know, a hotel situation that was like a 2-bedroom where we were in one bedroom, they were in the other, and they were some of the first people that we told because we just wanted them to be aware that we may be a little distant, you know, we may be a little bit emotional. So I don't think we fully processed it at that moment. I think there were so many unknowns still. You know, when you get a limb difference diagnosis in utero, like a lot of times, first of all, we have a lot of doctors, and every doctor was
How was the response from the doctors, by the way?
So the first doctor we met with, she didn't seem to be too concerned.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't like, oh, this is common. It was just like, hey, there's a lot that we still have to figure out. This is very early on, but she did make us aware that a lot of times when there are limb differences, there can be symptomatic things that will present as well. And a lot of it is soft tissue related. So there could be holes in the heart, there could be trachea issues. And it was terrifying for me because we had just lost my niece, who passed away 8 days after she was born, to a hole in her heart. And I was like, well, wait a second. I was like, is this like a genetic thing that we just don't know about? But they couldn't see any of that on ultrasound because it's soft tissue. So basically we had to wait until the day Emerson came to know if she was going to have
How did you manage that emotionally? Did you just head down kind of thing like we did?
I mean, at times, yes. We went to see so many specialists. You know, we went to one, orthopedic specialist who was like doom and gloom sort of person. And she was like, you need to be ready for a syndrome and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, and what she was saying was like so off base. I remember sitting there in this consultation with her and I was like, I just have to stop you. I was like, are we talking about the right child? Because everything you're saying is the opposite of what we've been told. She goes, I said, did you look at the ultrasound? She goes, I don't need to look at it. I know what's going on. And I was like, we drove like almost 4 hours for this consultation. And I remember we were driving home. I said to my wife, I was like, I am so angry right now.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening? Like, have we been lied to for the last 2 months and finally this person is telling us the truth? Or is this person just off?
Yeah.
And so then we went and saw another specialist and and it was just like the people we ended up sinking into were much more encouraging. And so there were times where I was terrified. There was other times where it was just like, I can't change what is. All I can do is try to educate myself in the best way possible and put this anxious energy that I have inside of me to work. And that's how the
Well, and you've clearly done the work, during utero, so that by the time she came, it was almost like it was written. But let me ask you, so did you connect, because you did have a prenatal, did you, because I know Taryn, I don't want to speak for you, you connected, obviously, she and I didn't meet until I had birth diagnosis, so we met post.
Okay.
And so your experience was different than mine, but did you outreach to other families with the same experience to get sort of like a level set of what to expect, or were you like, okay, let's just, because I used to say before I kind of really dove in with Addie that I'm not an expert in Down syndrome, I'm an expert in Addie, and I said it for a different reason, but I'm still not an expert in Down syndrome, I'm still not an expert in disability, I'm an expert in my kid, and I think we can say that as a universal thing as parents, but I wouldn't be that confident in that without the community, right? So did you outreach for community then, or when were you ready? Because just so you know, we are actually moms, she and I, but we are ELM, so we are inclusive, obviously, of all individuals that have a disability experience, but men are very difficult to get on the dang podcast, let alone share on the blog. My own husband, her husband, they're like, you do you, honey. I'm just gonna let your free.
They're supporting you.
Of course, and everyone advocates differently.
Yeah.
But I think it's so fun to connect with you because as a creative ourselves, it's so clear the confidence that you possess in not only your art, but the way that you advocate. And I think that there's a lot of tie to that. So I don't know if that resonates or if you want to talk, because you've done so much in this space.
It's interesting you say confidence. I think it's vulnerability, I think is the word. I think when you are open, people assume confidence, right? And so for me,
vulnerability equals strength. So that makes sense.
I've learned the hard way that when you keep all of this stuff inside, it doesn't just go anywhere. You're just pushing stuff into a closet that eventually will run out of room and the door will burst open. I had to learn that the hard way, So what I've learned is that as hard as it is to share what I'm really feeling, to make myself that vulnerable, it is imperative for me as myself, first and foremost, to be that person, because I am then at peace, which then enables me to show up for my kids properly, to show up for my wife, to show up at my work. And I think it was hard to be vulnerable in the beginning because it's scary, but also I work in an industry where as a TV producer, director, so often you feel conditioned to be like, I can't show any weakness. I've got to have all the answers all the time. And now all of a sudden I'm thrust into this situation that I have no understanding of, no experience with whatsoever. And then you create a book series and you're on Good Morning America and all these sorts of things, which is a blessing and it's incredible. But people, I think, start assuming that you got it all figured out. And you I felt at times this inherent pressure to be this hero dad, which I never wanted to be that. I think just showing up as a parent is heroic in and of itself.
With a disability or not.
Yeah, just to be there for your kids, and I never wanted the story of the Capables to be about me. Right. And a lot of the press that I did, and I understand it because I work in the industry, it was well, what is it like, to be a dad? And I'm like, this isn't about me. Whatsoever, so that's when I feel like the confidence started to come for me, was when I really started standing up in these interviews and, for better or worse, just saying I don't have it all figured out. And I'm scared for the world that my daughter is growing up in. But guess what? Every other parent is scared out there too. I'm just scared for different reasons. And so my message became more about trying to relate what I was going through to parents as a whole and just people as a whole, because this word inclusion in some communities is a bad word. It's you have some agenda or you're woke or whatever it might be, but that's because those people don't understand the real definition of the word and what we're fighting for. So for me, it's become more about relating to parents and helping them to understand that we all are different, we all have a different journey, and this is just mine.
Even with that family dynamic, my husband and I, as we just said, your husband and I and yourself are on different advocacy journeys. So maybe Matt, honestly, let's not let him be what I am, because I don't know if we're ever be successful.
But I say that all the time as a mom, because I have 4 kids. Only one of them has a intricacies that I have to work with from day to day. So I find myself saying what you just said, which is just normalizing the parent experience. That we, yes, we might have a child with a disability who has some needs, but we all have needs.
Yeah.
We all have, this human experience that varies from day to day.
Yeah, when I do, I do a lot of assemblies, right? And so a big part of these school assemblies is now I do these family readings. And it's amazing because it provides, they get to learn the story, but it provides them a space to be curious, not just the kids, but the parents. And a lot of them will start asking me questions. And the way I sort of relate to them is I say, look, because a lot of them want to have the conversation about disability, but they're scared about saying something wrong or insulting somebody. And they're like, well, where do I start? It's like, well, where did you start with talking about gun violence in schools? Where did you start with? There are tons of things for us to be nervous about talking to our kids about, but we figure it out.
Yeah.
So this is no different than that. It's just there are difficult conversations and they don't get any easier until you start having them. And so my hope is that through the books that parents are starting to have conversations with their kids without even realizing. That was part of the strategy with the way I've written the books, is that I wanted to provide the exact information about what is going on in terms that kids can digest, but also that parents can be reading to them. So they start having a conversation about disability without even realizing that they're having it.
Right. I loved the way you wrote your book, because when we got Adeline's diagnosis, as I said, we were buying all the books and doing all the things, and the books that were available even only 4 years ago were this is a person with Down syndrome, this is what it's like. This, at the end of the book, there was and it was all valuable. But we just had a meeting, a podcast interview with April Aguilar. I don't know if you know, she's a brilliant filmmaker and wrote a film called For Paloma from the perspective of the mother. And you only find out, well, by this point, he'll be after her, so it's okay. At the end of the film, which has been done, I should definitely connect you, because I'm sure you guys have best friends that are knowing each other because you're brilliant filmmakers and producers and all that stuff, but you don't know that the child has Down syndrome. All you're focusing on is the mother's experience and the horrible trauma that comes with the birth diagnosis and the postpartum and all that stuff. It's so raw and real. But it's so beautiful that she wrote this about her, right? Her perspective, and the least important thing about it was the diagnosis. It was about her. And I loved that you wrote your book about somebody that was a superhero. And honestly, the last thing I was, as a parent, thinking about was the limb difference, even though it was very apparent in the book. It's just not she doesn't, she has a limb difference and this is what that is. It was she's capable. And it was capability leading. And it inspired me a lot. And I still to this day, obviously we worked in this space for a long time. But I forget that Addie has Down syndrome.
So I'm glad you bring up the book and us not just coming out of the gates and saying meet Ray. She has a limb difference. When we were early days in the creative process, because I work with an advisory board on the book, one of our members, she had said, she goes, well, you don't bring up Ray's disability until 18 pages into the book. Don't you think you should bring it up sooner? And I said, no.
That's the point.
I said, we meet Ray and her family at the breakfast table on her first day of school. I said, they've known about Ray's limb difference since before she was born. So I don't sit around the breakfast table with Emerson and say so how's your limb difference going? That's just not a
How's
thing.
that extra chromosome, Addie? How you feeling with that dangling?
It's just part of our life. You said, I know that Emerson has an upper limb difference, but I don't see it when I look at her. There's times I've honestly, it's so interesting, and sometimes I worry I'm just getting old and I'm losing my mind. But I'm I go, oh, it's her. Sometimes I go, so left arm, right arm. I still to this day, even though my daughter is 5 years old and I've known her as having a limb difference on her right side since before she was born.
Right.
But it's not what I think about first. And so I also didn't want people from the non-disabled community to pick up the book and open it up and read it another book where they're trying to force this agenda down my throat. I wanted people to get invested in this family and invested in this kid and invested in this story, so that way when it came that Ray has an upper limb difference, they're I didn't even notice that. Because
I love that. It's very different what you've done for the disability literature. And that's why I brought up April, because she's working on another film, and she, even though she has a child with Down syndrome, and this first film is about that, she went into the casting process for the second, not having any sort of idea about casting a person with disability. And they did the casting, and the best actor for the role of the 16-year-old girl was this little girl that she's so inclusive. She's like, bring everybody to me.
Yeah.
And she chose that person, not because that she had Down syndrome, but because she was the best for the job.
Yeah.
And you did that in your pages of that book, and I read that a long time ago, and I still remember the impact of that first time I read it. And so I really thank you for obviously being here, but being a change maker and also being a voice for men in this space. I think it's hard for, I don't want to be stereotypical, it can be hard for women too to be vulnerable, but I really think that leading with love and understanding that vulnerability takes a lot of strength. It doesn't exist without. And also recognizing the and concept, where you can be happy and sad at the same time.
100%. There's an amazing song in the Addams Family musical. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Gomez sings this song called Happy Sad. And I always get choked up when I talk about it because it's how I feel about being a parent every single day. I encourage everyone to go listen to the song. God, no.
We've had a singer on before, so I'm like,
it's this whole story about how he's watching Wednesday growing up, and he's happy that she's getting older and stronger and more independent and coming into her own. But he's sad that she doesn't need him.
Oh my God, it made me
anymore.
cry.
And that's the story of parenting regardless. Whether your child has a disability or not, it is constantly being terrified and overjoyed at the exact same time. And that's a big part of like what I started to lean into. And so it goes back to your question earlier about when did you know like you were ready to like advocate. And it's been a journey because I'm in this place now where I feel more ready than I've ever felt, because I feel like I know my truth in all of it more than I did in the beginning. In the beginning, I just wanted to do something. And I'm glad that I took action. I'm glad that I did it. But like, I'm so also glad that like when our first book came out and Nickelodeon reached out to us and I met with their executives about developing it into an animated series, I'm glad it didn't happen. Because I wasn't where I believe I needed to be to sort of lead that. I would obviously love for this to become an animated series, but if it had become that at that time, I don't think I would have ever gotten to the place that I am now to really find my truth in all of it, my voice in all of it, which is imperative because now I feel like I can affect real change in the non-disabled community and how they sort of look at disability and parents of, disabled children, because that's really my lane as parents, because that's all I am, right? But like I was not in the right headspace to lead that charge back then. Unknowingly I was running. I was running from a reckoning that eventually came, and yes, it can be terrifying to face it, but I don't feel like we can show up as the best parents we possibly can until we find our truth in all of it. Like, because what it came down to for me was I knew that at some point in Emerson's life, she was going to ask me, well, how did you feel when you found all of this out, and how did you react? And if my answer was, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out, I didn't want that to be my answer. I wanted to say to her, I was scared. But I love you, and I wanted to do everything I could to make this world better for you. And you're my everything, and I'm committed to being the best I can be, and that means facing my own fears in all of this. Not because I'm disappointed, like I said earlier, but because I just love you so much. That's what it's all rooted in. It's just
it
love,
really is like
else.
being a disability parent is because again I have 3, I'll use quotes, like neurotypical kids. And my daughter Rhea, and it is parenthood in general is wearing your heart outside your chest because you're sending them out into the world every day, and you're hoping that people will be as kind to them as they might be to other people. You're hoping they'll be kind, like all of these things. But being a disability parent is almost like doing all of that like naked. Where you're like even more exposed and just really, begging the world to return the kindness to them that you know that they deserve, you know?
But when you find out what they deserve, that's when you commit to advocacy in the most beautiful way, right? So like, I just see so many synergies in what you just said, because we just started, we had nothing to, we were like, let's start a blog, we want an idea, and now we're here, but we could never have started this podcast back then. Yeah. Because we didn't have the perspective. Now, and we still don't have the full 360 perspective, but we're listening even better because we're open, we're less traumatized, we're more ingrained, we're more educated. It's a journey, and we never, we do a lot of corporate talks and keynotes, and we never come in and say, we are going to teach you how to be inclusive. We say, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we can't wait to share with you what we didn't know and what we know now. Yeah. And I think that there's such beauty in empathy, and leading with empathy, and leading with love,
and giving people the space to learn.
Yeah. And ask questions. And I loved how you were talking about kids asking questions. I love an excuse to, and that's why I got this tattoo, extra lucky, because I love when people are like, what does that mean? I'm like, well, let me tell you.
Right.
I love to answer questions because I was never told it was okay to. And I love when a doctor's like, how would you prefer I reference your daughter? Or, my mom the other day was like, is it okay to say this? Like, I've heard that you can't say special needs anymore. And I was like, I've heard that too, and we always are trying to be understanding of the community, so we don't use that, but if you wanted to use that around me, that's fine.
Right.
I think it's just, there's beauty in education.
100%.
But Taryn, did you want to ask our signature question?
Signature
We
question.
would love to know what makes you extra lucky.
I feel like we know, but
Oh
I want to hear it from him. He's such a gorgeous, speaker, producer.
Man. No pressure
No
at
pressure.
all at the moment.
Sorry.
I'm going to use the restroom while I'm thinking, and then I'll come back and we'll just edit that whole part out. No. Obviously, Emerson has changed my perspective on everything in life. I'm fortunate that I grew up with parents that were always incredibly supportive of anything that I wanted to do and encouraged me to be whatever that sort of looked like. So I think I had this firm foundation to stand upon. But when Emerson came, she just changed me as a person, and in all the best ways. I look back, I don't know if you ever do this, but I'll look back at old photos of myself or things that I wrote 10 years ago. I'm like,
That's my Friday night.
where are you?
I know.
But that.
I just want to give him a hug.
Yeah, you were scared of a lot of things in life, and Emerson has taught me to be more present, to be more authentic. She's incredible because some of my favorite parts about her is I go, what's your favorite color? She goes, rainbow.
Oh my God.
I go, what's your favorite animal? She goes, unicorn. Everything about her is just pure everything.
Joy.
It's just embracing everything that exists in life, the most fantastical. She's open about her emotions. When she doesn't want to hug, she says, I don't want to hug. When she needs to be hugged, she says, I need it. She is just so open.
And authentic.
And empathetic, and she's helped me to reconnect, I think, with who I am at my core, and it's the greatest gift I've ever received. Hands down.
Gosh, you are extra lucky.
Yeah, I
Beautiful.
really am.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you definitely delivered on the response. Just saying.
Just want to speak from your heart, folks.
Yes.
If I've learned anything in my career, it's whenever I interview people on TV shows, they go, well, what do I say? And I go, just say what you feel.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
Well, this afternoon I'll be at JFK. No. You can find me, Instagram I think is my preferred social media platform. I'm at Danny Jordan, Jordan. I say that because I have all these trophies from childhood that they spelled my name D-O-N. I was like, Michael Jordan was the most famous athlete of my generation. And you think my name is spelled with an O? But yeah, you can follow me at Danny Jordan, not Danny Jordan, on Instagram, and you can obviously look at The Capables. We're at The Capables on all social platforms. And if you like Christmas podcast, check out Christmas Countdown. We have a blast on that show, chatting about all things Christmas, movies, music, all the things.
I can't wait to, because I think we connected right after Christmas.
Right after the
this year.
holidays,
So
yeah.
I'm like, I cannot.
I literally listened to Il Divo's Christmas album on the way into the city. So
Did you really?
I
Today?
Today, Celine, well, I'm a Celine fan,
Okay.
but Christmas album.
Yeah.
Superior. I love everything Christmas. I used to put Delilah on back in the day on October 31st when it came on the radio. So I am going to be your biggest fan. Already am. Just like I just like Christmas music should live year round. Like it's just happy.
I was just listening to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, till January.
I was just listening to Frank Sinatra's Christmas album the other day.
I feel seen. My
Yeah,
husband's like, are you listening to Celine's Christmas album? I'm like, don't ask questions. I'm taking my
If
shower.
it makes someone happy, as long as it's not destructive to the world, just let people be who they are, whether that's Christmas or Disney or theater or advocating, like whatever it is.
Whoever they need.
Just let people be them, you know?
Absolutely.
So.
Well, thank you, Danny, for joining us
Oh,
today.
thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend or on social. It helps us to spread the message of this extra lucky life. Thank you so much.